Now, junior doctors have rejected the government's final offer on their new contract, despite their union, the British Medical Association, advising them to accept the deal. Jeremy Hunt, the Health Secretary, has said the result was extremely disappointing, and the chairman of the BMA's Junior Doctors Committee has resigned after warning members they're never going to get a better offer. Our health and social care correspondent Victoria MacDonald reports.
It had been hoped this was a signed and sealed deal. The new junior doctors contract approved by the government and the British Medical Association. But today, following a referendum, yes, another one, junior doctors and medical students have rejected it, 58% against. The Department of Health says, as you would expect, that it is disappointed in this result. But the question is, what next? Will Jeremy Hunt just simply go ahead and impose this new contract? Or will they go back to the negotiating table? Or will there be more strikes? So what did they reject? The deal reached in May counted Saturdays and Sundays as plain time, part of a junior doctor's normal working week. That was a massive concession by the BMA. However, they would receive extra money, between 3 and 10%, for working at least 7 full weekends a year. And their basic pay would increase by 10 to 11%, although not the 13.5% the Health Secretary had promised. Yet it seems other parts of the contract are of concern.
It still does not deal with the recruitment and retention, which is still a significant problem in the NHS. It still does not fully address the issues with discrimination against less than full-time workers. And it is still trying to expand 7-day services in an NHS which is already understaffed and in its worst financial crisis in its history.
Time is running out, though. Next month, more than 6,000 medical students graduate. They will be given the old contract to sign before moving on to the new one, if it's in force, in October. And today, the Health Secretary did not rule out imposing it.
I need to reflect on what's happened today, but I think I do owe it to the country to make a rapid decision going forward, because I think there are so many other currents in our national life at the moment that people in the NHS do need to know where they stand, and patients who use the NHS need to know whether we are going to proceed with our manifesto commitment for a 7-day service.
Where are you, Jeremy?
This has been a bitter dispute. 6 unprecedented strikes by junior doctors and numerous attempts at negotiation. Today, the BMA blamed the rejection on anger and mistrust towards the government over its handling of the dispute. But having asked his members to accept this contract, Johan Malawana, the chair of the Junior Doctors Committee, resigned, saying to continue in the job would be dishonourable and untenable.
Well, joining me now are 2 junior doctors, Dagan Lonsdale, who voted against the new contract, and Roshana Mehdian, who voted for it. Roshana, let's start with you. All the way along, we've had you in the studio, you've opposed this contract. So what changed your mind?
I think the main thing that I was concerned about and that made me vote yes, and it was a difficult decision, was that I was worried that would we vote no, we would lose some of the gains we'd made over the campaign in the 6 months. I was terrified, and I am terrified, that the government could impose a horrendous contract with all of those concerns about safety should we vote no, and that's happened, yeah.
Well, Dagan, respond to that.
Well,
She's
terrified. I share all of those concerns. It was a very difficult decision for me to vote no, precisely for the reasons that Roshana pointed out. But as the interview you had on earlier said, I am very concerned that we still don't have adequate safeguards for working conditions. For example, a hospital in South London covering 1,600 doctors is advertising this guardian role job that is supposed to protect junior doctors' work for a day a week, which is, frankly, just paying lip service to the idea of safe working practices.
OK, but let me quote the chair of the BMA Junior Doctors Committee at you, who said, in this context of the wider crisis, as he put it, of Brexit, the government now has, quote, every excuse to underfund the NHS. You are not going to get a better deal.
Well, I think what people look at when they look at this health secretary is someone who has no interest in patients in the NHS and only an interest in himself. We've heard him say that he has no interest in a job after being Secretary of State for Health, and then a few weeks later saying he wishes to be leader of the Conservatives because of a deluded thought on his negotiating
But that
skills.
still doesn't alter the fact you're not going to get a better deal.
Well, I think what we have shown in moving forward from the contract that was offered last October to now is that junior doctors are willing to sit down and work with government to produce safe and fair working conditions, and we're prepared to do that. However, what we're not prepared to do is to allow the government to railroad through an uncosted and unfunded 7-day NHS soundbite on the backs of junior doctors in a dangerous way.
Roshana, you've pushed the government so far, so why give up now?
I don't think we are giving up. I think ultimately, whether we voted yes or no, all junior doctors want the same thing. We want a safe and fair contract. Believe me, my voting yes wasn't because this contract was what I thought was good for the NHS. It wasn't
But isn't it
good.
naive to think you can, vote yes and then change the contract?
So, no, in that I believe that there were levers inside the contract that could allow us to effect change in the future. But regardless of that, none of us believe this has absolutely covered all of our concerns, OK? This is something that we're all still concerned about. That's why I'm sitting with Dagan, a no voter, I'm a yes voter, and I still think there are things that need to be addressed. And believe me, I think all of us will be united in the fact that we want more movement on this.
Well, Dagan, you're nodding. What happens next? You saw Jeremy Hunt in Victoria's piece there talking about a rapid conclusion, a rapid decision. Does that mean imposing the contract pretty rapidly?
Well, I think one thing I would agree with is we are in a complete situation of turmoil with government. We have a Prime Minister who's resigned. We do not know who will be in charge. We've had outlandish, outrageous and, frankly, lies promised to us during the Brexit campaign about funding to the NHS. I think making a rapid decision at this point would be beyond stupid. I think what the Health Secretary needs to do is to reflect, which is exactly what he said he's done, and reflect on how poor a job he's done as Secretary of State. I think it's time for not only new leadership at the BMA, but also in the Department of Health. And I hope that we will see that leadership change, that we can then work together with someone who wants to work constructively with the profession instead of degenerating them, which is what Jeremy Hunt has done.
But he could easily impose the contract before the reshuffle, before the new leader's in place. And then where are you at? Do you have to go on strike again?
Well, I think there's a question about whether he can legally impose this contract, and there are a group of junior doctors who intend to take Jeremy Hunt to court to answer that very question. So I think, again, we actually don't know what Jeremy Hunt can do.
But you don't rule out going on strike again?
Well, look, I think junior doctors have shown throughout this campaign that industrial action is the last thing they want to do. And the fact that we have sat down for 8 days in sort of rushed talks, albeit, and come through with some constructive improvements shows that we're willing to work with government. So I hope we won't
You're
need
sounding like you're
industrial
not, a strike is really not going to happen.
We need to take the context here. So, we've just had a Brexit vote. There's a lot of uncertainty, not just in the whole country about government, but about the NHS in this context as well. Over 20% of doctors are EU nationals. That's a huge amount of our workforce. If you're going to impose a contract that junior doctors don't agree with, and then at the same time there's the uncertainty about the workforce from the EU, that's 20% of doctors, remember. I mean, it would be very stupid indeed. And, I wouldn't put it past Jeremy Hunt, but it would be a very silly move.
Roshana, Dagan, thank you very much for joining us.